Hello and welcome to the SustainabiliTREE podcast with me, Katie.
And me, Mike. In SustainabiliTREE, we will explore all things trees and woodlands with a specific focus on the issue of plastics within the forestry sector.
In each episode, we will be looking at a variety of topics around this theme, including woodland creation, funding streams, plastic pollution, deer, soils, ecology, and so much more.
Shall we get started, Katie?
Let's go!
Well, hi, Katie. It's been, too long, isn't it?
Oh, it has indeed. I know. Where has the months gone?
Well, you decided to go off and do something else with your life, so we had to have a little bit of a temporary pause on the podcast. But it's good to be back. Although briefly, we are on a clock, aren't we?
That's our special guest for today. This is lovely Ren. This is my new daughter. She's decided she wants to be a co-host on the podcast as well. So there's three of us now.
Excellent. How old is Ren now?
So she's coming up to 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's been, what since we did the last episode. Oh my goodness, is it 5 months since we've done an episode? That's crazy.
It will be, yeah.
God, the time flies.
Yeah, and everything's going well?
Yeah, really well, thank you. I love being a mum. Absolutely love it. And she's so sweet, bless her. I'm currently having my arm chewed by her at the minute. And do you want to play with your little fox? There you go.
and off air, you were telling me that she already likes trees, and you've had her outside, and
she loves them. Yeah, I know. I was so happy when we go around in her pram and she sees, we go underneath this big ash tree and we've got this big beech out the front, and she goes underneath and she's just like wide-eyed, absolutely fascinated, looking at all the leaves, and I'm like, yay! She's gonna be a little nature baby.
Excellent. But she had no choice, you definitely have to drill it into her anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've tried to keep the good ship SustainabiliTREE going and sailing straight, but obviously without our chats together and without my co-host, I've not been able to do any recording. As a result, it wouldn't be fair just for me to talk to everybody on my own, Katie. So you have been missed. I'm so glad that we're able to catch up once again. But yeah, I've been okay. It's come out of a really busy tree planting season. I'm now into kind of woodland management plans and things like that. The weather is scaring me because we've got to include the weather, haven't we? The weather is scaring me. We are desperate for some rain up here at the moment.
It's been so dry.
Yeah, I think probably we've got away with it in terms of the schemes that we've done. But yeah, it's all good and sunshine, and what more can you ask for?
Awesome. Yeah, it wouldn't be our podcast if we didn't mention the weather at least once. And you know what? It's important for tree people because it all comes, not people who are trees, but people who plant trees, because the weather will make all the difference as to whether you can actually go out and do it. So that's why we talk about the weather all the time.
We do. And
because we're British as well. It's just what it's what we do.
Yeah, it's important. So we're just having a bit of a catch up, aren't we, Katie? Just letting our loyal listeners know, our loyal listeners know that we're still here and we are planning for so I guess the second half of season 1, a horrible Americanism of the podcast. But we want to kind of drop in and say hello and answer a few questions as well.
Yes, yeah. I've got 3 in front of me. So we started our Instagram page. And we've been posting bits and bobs on there, and one of them was asking if anyone had any questions. So yeah, I've got 3 on here. Have you had any emailed in, Mike?
No, I haven't. No, people only speak with you. They stay away from me. But no, apart from people asking where the podcast is and things like that. But no, it's good that our listeners are sending questions, and we're always interested in people's questions and comments, and we'd love to give you a shout out. Yet another horrible term, but we'd love to get say thank you on the podcast as well. And yeah, so please do get in touch if you have any comments or questions. Do you want to fire away with the first one, Katie, or do you want me to read it? Or how would you like to do it?
I'll go for it. Yeah. I was just thinking back to I think it was one of our earlier episodes where you said we had a question and it was about whether my hat was real. And I don't think I have uploaded that picture yet, so I will do it and I will prove to everybody that the hat is real. And the hat shall return. Not next episode, because that one's I already did the hat for that one, didn't I?
Yep.
But for the episode after that, and I'll prove to everyone the hat is real. So right, we've got our first question here. Hi Mike and Katie. I don't suppose you have any flyers or any posters advertising the podcast and recycling schemes, etc. I'm in the Calder Valley, where there has been thousands of trees planted with tree guards over the last 20 years or so. The vast majority have never been removed. Most landowners don't seem to realise that there's an issue, and I think the tree planters, although full of good intentions, have their heads in the sand about it. It'd be good to spread the word, and I'd be happy to distribute the materials around here. So yeah, do you want to answer that one, Mike?
Yeah, well,
flyers and posters?
Well, we could produce a leaflet of some description, I guess. But we're trying to spread the word through social media, and that kind of word of mouth thing is important to us, and just the fact that people are sending questions in and people are listening to it. If they could let their friends know, it's that cheesy kind of share, subscribe, comment type comment, isn't it, Katie?
Yeah.
So it's good to know that people would like us to advertise the podcast more. And we were just talking off air about perhaps doing some t-shirts and things like that. So we could sponsor somebody to get a tattoo, I'm sure. But yeah, it is something we're looking at. So thank you very much for that question. I think that the rest of that question is quite interesting, because it's something that we're coming up with quite a lot, really. The legacy of plastic in the landscape, it is because of good intentions, isn't it? People have planted woodlands kind of 10-15 years ago with good intentions and doing the right thing, field corners and gills and things like that. But I just think people are so busy, Katie, that for the first 2 years, they'll walk around the woodland and they'll make sure the stakes and the tubes are upright, and as the trees grow, they'll enjoy that. But especially the landowners I work with, they might have 400-500 sheep to deal with on a daily basis, and or a kind of multi-farm enterprise, and it's something that just gets forgotten about. And then when the likes of us turn up and we launch a recycling scheme and we start talking about the issue of plastic, that's when these people turn around to us and say, oh yeah, I've got loads on my land, and they need clearing up. But it's almost we've gone past the point where that's an easy job, haven't we? Plastic should come off. If it's good to come off, it should come off after kind of 7 or 8 years. But most of the woodlands I'm clearing at the moment are probably 10 years plus, and that's when the job gets really difficult. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to educate landowners. When's the best time to take a tube off? Should you be using a tube in the first place? And just kind of having that longevity, sustainability thoughts in the head that if I put this plastic shelter on this tree, I know I will have to deal with it in 7 years, and therefore it's an informed decision. It's kind of you're thinking about the future. So I think the tree planters, I do think the tree planters get it, but they're they're probably on piece rates and peacetime type contracts as well. If you're a tree contractor and you've got to get in. A tree contractor. If you're a tree planter and you've got to get 10,000 trees in, over the course of a couple of days, you're not probably thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years. You want to get that tree, you're not going to get paid at the end of the day. So, yeah, we just need to kind of spread the word, which we are doing, which the Forest Plastic Working Group is doing as well. Yeah. But at least let people know that there now is a route to removing those products from your land when they've come to the end of use, and get them to recycling hubs. What do you think? Or am I just babbling there?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's about responsibility, isn't it? Taking responsibility. And it's like one of the things that we always say about doing something as amazing as tree planting shouldn't result in another environmental issue. We're doing it to solve the environmental issue of climate change, and to build habitat and things like that, and also build up sorry, I'm picking up a baby at the same time, that's why I sound up. trying to build timber resources and things, but it shouldn't result in a secondary environmental issue as plastic pollution. And we don't know what they're doing to the soils or even the trees themselves or other flora, because that's not been researched for tree guards that have been left out in woodlands for 10 years plus. We don't know what's happening there, but we do know from science about what happens to certain invertebrates or other species from ingesting plastic. So we know that it's likely going to be a big issue than being left out. So we need to do something about it. But we're doing our little bit here in the podcast universe, aren't we? And on social media and raising awareness. And I think that's a really good point in that question about things like posters and flyers, other ways that we can try to reach out to people and reach out to people in the industry, but also the general public and things like that, to raise awareness of the issue. And exactly, Ren, you think the same.
I think one thing I've noticed over the last kind of 5 or 6 years is people are talking about this a lot more, aren't they? So whether that's the kind of blue planet effect and single-use plastic appearing in our oceans and things like that, which has always been there, but obviously David Attenborough did his bit and made it front and center in people's minds. But people are talking about this more now, and I guess to affect the change that we're looking for, really. And let's for me, that would be that plastic is used as a last resort, and we can plant trees without doing it as nature intended, and we could perhaps use fencing and things like that. So to affect that sort of change is going to take a long time. But I think the fact that people are talking about it, the take up of the recycling hubs over the last couple of years has been phenomenal. The amount of plastic has doubled that's going in, and it's easy to do that with stats, isn't it? But the amount of plastic that's going into the recycling hubs has doubled, and already the ones that I'm looking after this year are looking pretty rammed up as well. So the message is, it is getting home. But I think we've said on the podcast a few times, Katie, haven't we, that estimates say that there's between 14 and 24 million shelters going out per year, and the recycling rates at the moment don't match what's going out there. There is a significant difference now. Obviously, as the use of plastic tree guards kind of diminishes over the next few years, which it will do. There are going to be less because people are kind of more informed. I think it's going to take a long time to catch up with the amount of recycling, but we've got to start somewhere, and that's what we're trying to do. So that was a bit of a long-winded answer to probably what was just a point that was raised with us, and I'm hoping at some point we could actually, because our podcast, we try and get them into that kind of 30-minute category, and you can't really get into depth sometimes over kind of why we've ended up where we are, and hopefully we can get some guests on in the future. We can talk about some of the things that listener raised. But I got a question for you now, Katie. Obviously, you, I say you because you did it. You launched the Plot That Plastic app not so long ago, probably 6 months ago, and I think we've got something like 1.8 million shelters mapped now across the country, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we had a question here. It says somebody wants to know what happens with the app, basically. So if someone kind of maps plastic tree guards, but then who removes them? So I guess a person is asking, what's the process now with all that data that's been collected? What is going to happen with that?
Oh yeah, so I'm amazed by the amount of people that have used the app, and thank you so much. If you've plotted some tree guards on there, it's amazing to see the dashboard. So if you have a look at the dashboard, you can see all the ones that have been plotted around the country. We added in a section on there, so basically you can say if you've removed your tree guards, because that was the issue. We didn't want people to be mapping tree guards that then someone's gone out and removed them the following year, because then they're no longer at risk of becoming plastic pollution. So we've got that on there now. So if Ren, so if you have done a project and that you've removed them, you can use that feature now, which is amazing. So we're just going to keep gathering data. I'd like to get a full year's worth of data on there really before we start doing some bits and bobs with it. But yeah, we're going to have a little look and see if there's any concentration of areas, and then me and you, Mike, could have a little explore and see about potential recycling hubs, or reaching out to volunteer communities in that area to see if there's anything that people can do to help these landowners or land managers deal with that. But yeah, so yeah, ideally like to get sort of a bigger data set still, but like you say, we've got over 1.5 million plotted so far, but as we know, over 1 million tree guards are used every year alone in England anyway, so I can imagine there's multi-millions out there over the last 3 decades that are in need of being removing. So I'm hoping to see that number increase over the next 6 months. So yeah, please go plotting that plastic. If you're out on a dog walk, out on a bike ride, on a train and you see them, or just driving past, and because you can always do it when you get home as well, you don't have to do it there and then. Yeah, please do join in with the project, because the more that we know where they are, then yeah, we can start doing something about it. And it's also like the raising awareness side of it as well, getting more people talk about it, because it's a citizen science app. Anybody can join in, so we can help to be able to share it with the general public, people who wouldn't necessarily come across this sort of thing in their day-to-day lives. People think that we're just targeting it at foresters or conservation organisations or gardeners, things like that plant trees, but no, it's for everybody to use and to be aware of as well, because it does impact us all. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes, and then we can obviously use that as well, hopefully in the future, as evidence, as have that data there as evidence to help guide policy, to help guide things on a wider scale with grant schemes and things like that, fingers crossed. So who knows where it could go, but first of all, we just need to have that data.
Yeah, it's gone really well. I think what you're saying about getting a good data set, a year's worth, is quite interesting. We've got 24 recycling hubs at the moment, but we know that some of those hubs are not maxed out, and if we want to get more hubs across the country, there are areas that we're not involved in at the moment. We have managed to get 3 into Scotland and 1 in Northern Ireland as well, but if there's hubs that's not being utilised, this data set will enable us, as you say, to turn around and say, for argument's sake, we only managed to get 30% capacity in Liverpool, but there's so many tree guards around Wigan, so to speak. Why don't we try and move a hub there? So that's kind of why we're doing it. And I think and even I was a bit reluctant at first, Kay. I was kind of concerned about were we naming and shaming kind of people. Possibly we're having a lot of plastic on the woodlands, even though obviously we don't name landowners or things like that, and there is no real way of identifying who's planted a woodland there or whatever. That was, at least I know there was a couple of concerns raised at the time, and I think I had a little concern about we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to go out and name and shame. Although it is quite helpful sometimes, isn't it? Because it helps people kind of refocus their mind and decide that they need to kind of sort their legacy out. But you must be proud of how it's gone, and it's quite an easy app to use as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really chuffed, and it's one of those things that that start off with an idea. I think we spoke in one of the previous episodes about how it came around, and to see it grow and become a real life application, and people using it, engaging with it is it's really cool. I mean, just the technology of it now, with GIS and sort of how we can do stuff, utilising that, I think that it will make a real difference in the future. As we've spoken about in previous episodes as well, around plastic policy and things that are coming down the pipeline with the Global Plastics Treaty and things like that, now is, well, obviously 10 years ago would have been better, but now is more of a time to get ahead of this and know where it is we're putting our waste out there. And forestry waste is something that me and you spoke about it so many times. We think is a forgotten pathway of plastics into the environment. That's my sleep deprivation there coming through. Into the environment. So just because it's not like the hot topic doesn't mean that it doesn't serve the spotlight. You know, we talk about crisp packets and plastic bottles and things all the time, but this is, I'd argue that potentially more plastic tree guards out in the environment than crisp packets, possibly. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but you know, if you've got a project that's planted 100,000 trees, that's 100,000 tree guards that are potentially going to be left out in the environment. Where else do you get a concentration of 100,000 crisp packets other than an abandoned crisp packet factory or landfill?
No, you're completely right, and the fact that you've named it as it is, it's waste. I think people in our sector don't get that it is waste, you know, because it's a product and it's doing its job. They're not considering the fact that it's waste, or will become waste in 10 years time. And that's, again, that's kind of the work we're doing, isn't it? Is to just get people to kind of think, and, you know, following that kind of classic waste hierarchy. You know, do you reduce, reuse, recycle? You know, the recycling hub should be should be well down the list, which it is. If you're following the waste hierarchy, you know, we shouldn't even be considering recycling. We should be, you know, reducing, and then reuse is difficult, you know, and we can talk about that another time, the kind of reuse of these type of products. But we've got to try and make the sector realise that this is effectively waste from day one. Or am I speaking out of turn there, Katie? You've been involved in the sector, you know, a lot longer than I have. Do you think that? Would you agree? Would you disagree?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we do that in our daily lives. So, well, we should be doing that in our daily lives with like things like, having a think about, is there an alternative that you can use that might be better? But I mean, in this circumstance, I mean, it's like looking at the reason why you're using it in the first place. This is, I mean, we spoke about again on previous episodes, but I like to focus on this because it's the main point of why we're even using plastic tree guards. If we can deal with that issue, so whether you're using it for protection against browsing animals, or is there a better way of doing that? Is there a way of actually being able to deal with the problem itself? Because then you won't need to use it in the first place, and then it sort of, it doesn't become a problem. But obviously that's a greater issue that needs more people to come together and a lot more focus on. But people do need to realise that it is it is waste, and as well with other things that we use. It's not just a tree tube. Yeah. There's the tie, even a stake that you put in the ground, is that treated? There's other environmental things with that. The tie that you put it on, even the tag from the nursery, that has the tree's name on it and the price. I see so many projects where people have planted older trees and then they've left the tags on and they haven't removed them, and it's just that's going to disintegrate at some point. But we just if you think about like gardening as an industry, how much plastic is used in gardening? Yeah, like, definitely. Plastic, the bags that the soil comes in, the plastic pots, the mulch mats, and weed suppressant sheeting, and the tags again for plants. There's so much plastic used in that. Why? I know there is probably amazing people out there working on that, but why are we not reducing that? You've got to think how many people's gardens have just got plastic in. It is everywhere, and I just find it baffles me how it's so ingrained, like the use of plastic is so ingrained into the environmental sector, into where we're trying to do better things for the environment, yet and it's not even as if like using it is bad. If we were using plastics being used in the medical industry, rightly so, because it's baby brain again, what's the word, sterile, and things like that, and things you can't reuse them and stuff like that, but that's for a purpose. If it was more for that, I could understand, but it's so willy-nilly, and it's just left out, it's just forgotten about. And yeah, that's what baffles me, is just how we claim to be green but we're not.
Well, I think it's because we are green, isn't it? I think it's it's that kind of, well, I'm putting 1,000 trees out and they're doing so much good things for biodiversity and the landscape and carbon capture, that I guess inward, you're probably saying, oh, that kind of outweighs the bad, kind of outweighs the plastic that's out there, and things like that. So you can justify anything, can't you?
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
I don't even think it's been thought of a lot of the time. You know, like in the, you know, you've got to think in ecology in itself, like how, you know, the materials that you use. You'll use a bit of felt, you know, for doing a reptile survey, or you'll leave them plastic what are they called? Like, I can't remember, for surveying dormice. You know, the plastic tunnels for them, you know, and they'll be left out. And I've gone into woodlands and seen ones that have been left out, and spoken to the person who owns the woodland, and they've been there for like 5 years, and just no one's brought them back in again. You've got, you know, even that sector itself uses lots of plastic, and then leaves it to waste. So it's I think we just need to be more responsible, you know, about it. Okay, Mike, a question for you this time from one of our listeners. So this is about the recycling of tree guards. All our questions have been on tree guards today, which is our favourite topic, so I'm quite happy. So this one's about the recycling of them. So they want to know, how does the recycling process actually happen?
Okay, well, there's probably better people than me to kind of talk through it, but to try and get it as kind of basic as possible. So people who manufacture products now have to have a certain amount of recycled content in their products. You know, that's been mandated by government, and you know, there's also lots of other, you know, key factors around that, you know, the price of virgin plastic and things like that. So it's obvious that recycled plastic of any particular type or grade is quite an important resource. And that's, you know, that completely takes out the kind of environmental part of that, Katie. And I do sound like I'm an advocate for the plastics sector there, which isn't the point, but that's kind of the, you know, it's not just a corporate social responsibility issue. There's also, you know, kind of an economic benefit to it as well. And anything that involves, let's be honest, anything that involves not using virgin plastic has to be a good thing, and also the kind of natural resources that end up being used around that. So when the shelter comes into a hub, you know, ideally packed vertically in a this is my appeal now, bang on the table, ideally packed vertically in a dumpy sack. You can use any sort of sack with the ties removed. You can put the ties in the bags, but ideally with the ties removed and the stakes removed as well. The amount of times I've got to open up the bags and I see stakes and ties still packed to the tubes is really frustrating, Katie. And if I get to do one thing on this podcast today, apart from say hello to the wonderful Ren and yourself, it is please take your ties off, because it's, you know, these hubs are run by volunteers, and that's what we've got to do. So when they come into us, they will be loaded onto a wagon. A wagon, that's nice and old-fashioned, onto an Arctic lorry, and they are taken down to a site in, now it might have changed, Katie, but what was happening was it was taken down to a site in South Wales, where that material would be basically sorted and taken out of the bags, and you know, anything that shouldn't be in there would be taken away. That material then was sent to another site in, I think it was Derbyshire at the time, but I think that has now changed, and that's where the material will be kind of washed, you know, make sure that it's of a suitable enough quality to be recycled and reused again. There at that depot again, you kind of another sort, you know, make sure that it's washed and cleaned, and you know, any kind of bits of metal taken out. It's amazing what you'll find in dumpy sacks, even after they've been sorted once. It's then pelleted, or is it pelleted, or there was a term for it, it's either pelletized or something like that anyway. And then that pelleted material is then returned back to South Wales, where it is then goes in to making a new tube. So it'd be quite good to get somebody on who's involved in the actual recycling process for them to take it through. But so effectively, you've got kind of 2 or 3 stages where the material's sorted. So you might collect 50 tons of of waste plastic and tree guards, but then you might only send 45 tons to be kind of cleaned and, you know, kind of shredded and you know, made into pellets so it can be used again. So all along the process, it's really important that we're getting good stuff, kind of good quality material in that process. So we're avoiding, you know, any kind of material having to head to, you know, other waste processes or to, you know, kind of, I guess, energy recovery and things like that. But, you know, the system is pretty slick at the moment to make sure that as much of the material that's brought in is taken back. And one of the main things that's happened over the last 3 years that we're not just able to take, I say the project is not just able to take the kind of the standard PP polypropylene shelters, you know, it is able to take other products in there as well, so that, you know, the kind of really, I think it was called an acorn guard years ago, which almost has like it's a green mesh and things like that. So
the HDPE, high density polyethylene. Yes.
So it also means that, you know, as well as the standard, and let's be fair, the standard Tubex shelter, you can take the Defender, which is like a square one in there as well, and some of the older types as well. So yeah, it's quite a slick process. But the issue I'm finding at the moment is it's the material that comes into the hubs, the fact that volunteers are having to sort through that just to make sure there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in, and it's then going down to, you know, somewhere else for it to be sorted to be then put to somewhere else. So you've almost got kind of 2 or 3 processes. So it's just important that the stuff that's put in there can be recycled and it's not kind of contaminated in any way. And one of the big things that does contaminate the process is if a spiral guard ends up in the bag. And that's why we try and do a sort at the hubs, and then it's sorted down in South Wales as well, because if that does get through the process and ends up going to, you know, where this material, I guess, is melted down, things like that, the last thing you need is a kind of PVC spiral in that process. So that's a long-winded way of saying, you know, how a very basic way of saying how the process works. But I think it would be good to get somebody on who's actually involved in the process and get them to talk us through, and then we can grill them about, you know, could we do this any better, or is this another way? And I know that, you know, even the dumpy sacks are recycled as well in the process. So, and the nylon ties that attach to the stakes, they can also be recycled. Many years ago, those nylon ties also had a metal pin in them as well. So, you know, there's a system of making sure that those metal pins are not kind of put through the process too. So yeah, it's quite. I've made it sound really easy, but it is quite intricate, and obviously is ensuring that, you know, there's a good quality plastic coming back into making a new tree shelter, and I think it's around about 35% of a new shelter at the moment. That could have been the figure a couple of years ago, is recycled plastic. You know, the manufacturers are working hard on trying to get that as high as possible, and you know, ideally to 100% at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I've got questions already, and like you say, we should probably get somebody on who works within there, because it would be interesting to see. I mean, how many times can they be recycled? Because is there a cap on that for polypropylene?
I'm not sure, to be honest, Katie. I remember somebody saying, you know, probably 9 times. That was a figure that was quoted at me a while back. And you think that if a shelter, well, especially in the upland areas of the Yorkshire Dales, you know, a shelter could stay on for 15 years, you know, so you're going to get a very long life cycle out of that piece of plastic. Whether we're still using shelters in 100 years is quite a depressing thought, really. You'd think that we would have advanced to a little bit further than that, but yeah, it's quite a durable product. And, you know, as I say, I think it'd be good to get somebody on who's involved in that recycling process, but also somebody who can talk about the recycling of spiral guards and PVC as well, as PVCs are really easily recycled material. It just undergoes a very different process because of what's involved in that PVC itself. But there's not a massive market for the after product which seems to be the issue there. But yeah, it'd be really good to get somebody on to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be interested to know the carbon footprint as well of the recycling of them, because we do need to factor that into it all. You know, the manufacturing of it has a carbon footprint, the delivery, how we use it, and then again the recycling of it. And that should come into our decision making, I think, when we choose to use them as well. It's, in my opinion.
No, I think you're right, and you know, the LCA studies, probably in my kind of naive, just getting into the sector and starting to research as much as this as I could, I was kind of guided by LCAs and, you know, what products to use, and you know, the fact that at the time, you know, the kind of typical tree shelter, plastic tree shelter, as long as it is recycled, is the best thing, is the best way of kind of, you know, minimizing carbon impact and things like that. But LCAs always return to plastic because, you know, the recycling of plastic is quite simple to do. It's quite an easy supply chain there. You know, there's hubs across the country to do that. You know, recycling plastic is again something that every council in the country should be doing. So those LCAs don't take into consideration the fact that an alternative guard might be best if it was upscaled to, you know, the same way that kind of plastics have been upscaled in the manufacturer. So yeah, I'm quite interested in the distance between, you know, and, you know, an Arctic traveling up and down here, there, and things like that. And you know, I know that the recyclers are working hard to make sure that those kind of that footprint is as minimized as quick as possible. I think at the end of the day, you know, if you collect 10,000 shelters in and you can almost, you know, repurpose and recycle, let's just say for argument's sake, 90% of those and 95%, you know, that's a damn sight better than 100% going into landfill and then the issues that we have there. But yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Just for the listeners, what do you mean by LCAs?
Life cycle analysis.
There we go. We can put some links to that in the show notes, can't we, as well? To them, there was was it the paper done by the Woodland Trust, life cycle analysis?
Yeah, and that was with the University, or it was UCL, wasn't it? Which is University College London. And in fact, if you go to the Forest Plastic Working Group website and head into the resource hub, there is a video of how the LCAs were calculated by the chap whose name I'll put in the show notes because I don't want to mispronounce it now, but by the chap who actually was involved in that study as well. So it's quite an interesting process, but it does always, because of those kind of, you know, chains of manufacture and economies and things like that, they do always seem to go back to plastic, which obviously the plastics manufacturers would absolutely love. So that was nice, Katie, with a couple of really interesting questions there. I'm sure I can, you know, get into people's ribs and we can get some more over the next coming episodes. It'd be good to have a listener question section in each podcast, as well as, you know, interviewing cool people and yeah, because I find all this stuff cool anyway. You know, kind of talking plastic and pollution and things like that is not everyone's cup of tea, but I certainly enjoy it. And I know that somebody who's not too far away from me here, well, you are far away because you're about 300 miles away, but has been enjoying the limelight a little bit as well and shining a light on the sector and things like that. So yeah, Katie has been our PR. It's definitely been the person that everybody's going to talk about kind of plastic and women in forestry and things like that, Katie. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and, you know, do I have to talk to your agent now? Is this the plan?
Thank you. I was lucky enough to be asked to interview for the Forestry Journal for International Women's Day, so I didn't expect it to be a double page spread. I thought it was just going to be a tiny little article, but yeah, no, they very kindly did that. So if anyone's read it, so I managed to talk about plastics, which I was really happy with, to try and spread our message and hopefully engage people that, you know, read the Forestry Journal in it, you know, who do tree planting or run run woodlands and manage woodlands and forests, to be able to engage with the Forest Plastics Working Group, hopefully, and just sort of be a bit more mindful about using plastics in their projects. So hopefully that did that. But yeah, no, that was really cool to be asked to do that. And I mean, I'm a yes girl anyway. I love an opportunity. So anyone wants me to do a talk or something like that on it, I'm more than happy to. And I know the same for Mike. I mean, me and Mike are, the dynamic duo. We're happy to go along and do bits and bobs to help spread the message, because at the end of the day, if who else is going to do it? If that's sort of been our attitude, isn't it? When we come up with doing the podcast, we were just like and ahhing, and we just thought, yeah, let's do it, because it needs to be spoken about. And it's one of those things when you get ideas, isn't it? It's like you sort of think, oh, maybe someone else will do it, and it's like, well, maybe they won't. So let's get cracking. And here we are, episode 6. 7?
Yeah, so 6.2, whatever it is.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I think you're right there with we have to get the message out there more, and if that means that we've got to stand up in front of people and talk about this and be quite honest as well, then I'm all for it. I did a presentation for the Chartered Institute of Wastes Management quite recently up in Preston, to their northern section, and those people are used to dealing with waste, and it was very kind of dominated by household recycling and things like that. And you speak to those sort of people and you think, well, they're going to know that this plastic needs taking off and recycling, because there's people involved in highways there as well. And the amount of people who didn't know about the hubs or the fact that this material could be recycled and things like that was really interesting. So I'm always quite happy to speak to people who want to listen, really. I think foresters and woodlands people have probably had enough of me saying clean up your stuff. You do feel like you're preaching to the converted a little bit sometimes, Katie, I think. But yeah, we're always happy to talk, and and it just shows, with what you've done with Forestry Journal and Plot Out Plastic and things like that, the sector is moving now, isn't it? It is moving to sort out its problems.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the goal, and we'll keep plugging away and giving you some cool things to listen to, hopefully over the next coming second half of series 1, or season 1, or whatever we're calling it. Season series, I don't know, we're going British or American.
Yeah, well, we'll just keep plodding.
Yeah,
we'll see.
But yeah, so we've had our special guest Ren today, who's been an absolute angel, bless her. And I was saying to Mike before we started recording about how my multitasking skills have become on point. I can now record a podcast and also feed a baby at the same time. So I'm quite impressed with myself.
Well, I'm glad to talk to you again, Katie, and I'm glad that Ren's doing really well. Such a lovely name as well. I had a feeling you'd go down a kind of a bird route with the name as well, but yeah, so that's a lovely name, and I'm so glad we've been able to chat, and once again, we thank everybody for bearing with us. It's been quite an interesting few months, Katie, haven't we, with kind of jobs and babies and things like that. So it's good that we've been able to talk to people, and we just love hearing comments from people and love getting questions. And if you can share the message podcast and get your friends to listen to it, and we're quite happy to talk to ourselves, Katie, if we need to. If we would probably do this if we only had a couple of listeners anyway, but it'd be good to get it out there even further. And please do, I'm going to say it, Katie, I'm really sorry, I'm going to do the like. Please do like, comment and subscribe. That's what we need. And we got some exciting things to do over the next few episodes.
We do. We've got our next one, which is on greenwashing, which will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to that one. And as always love talking to you, Mike. I've missed you, and I think this would be a good opportunity to plug your book. Come on, don't play it down. You've been working really hard over the last however many months on your book, which is available when?
Next April.
Next April
is when it is. So it's a complete guide to the UK's national parks. So it's been endorsed by all 15 national parks, which is good. It's good for sales. Let's think of the bunts, Katie. Yeah, it's good for sales, but it gives it, I guess a little bit of gravitas as well, and it means that each park has been kind of invested in me, and I'm more invested in them. But yeah, complete guide to UK's national parks. So I've had the awful job of visiting 15 national parks in the last, well, it would be 6-7 months, which has been quite entertaining whilst having a full-time job as well, and also putting
family.
Yeah, and a family, and also putting another book to bed at the same time as well. So I had a bit of a crossover between projects. But yeah, it's been good. And Katie, this might sound really kind of cheesy, but people know of the podcast in different national parks, and I've picked up listeners. Oh, we've picked up listeners from Northumberland, who, I was going to interview a farmer there, and they listened to the podcast to make sure that I wasn't a crank, and then have spread the message around there. So that's nice. But yeah, it's amazing how many people know around the country of the podcast, even though we've only been going a few episodes really, and also of the Forest Plastic Working Group as well. So yeah, it's been an onerous job really. I know that. I've got to be honest and say that visiting 15 national parks has been absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to lie, and sitting with locals in pubs and chatting, and getting to climb mountains and sail on locks and go caving and things like that. It's not every day you get the opportunity to do that. But having to turn it around so quick and write everything up so quick has drained me somewhat. But I'm glad this podcast is up and running, Katie, because I can now focus on that. The book's gone to bed. The book has hopefully been put to bed this week. And yeah, onwards and upwards.
Woo-hoo. Well, here's to the next episode, guys. Can't wait to speak to you then.
Yeah, bye, everyone.
Bye.
So you reckon we've got 15 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
I've got my finger in her mouth at the minute. Oh, now she's chewing on my arm.